Welcome everyone. This is Cole, and this is my corner called Cole's Corner.
Cole's Corner. That's funny.
Barry, my old buddy from USA, has invited me to do something different this time.
You're right.
We used to do podcasts together, but we ran out of inspiration. I think he just got really bored with me.
Super bored.
So he goes, do your corner and then you can just ramble on about what you think is right or wrong. Oh, that man, he really cracks me up.
He really does.
Seriously now. So what I'm going to be talking about, and was invited and inspired by Barry. He's my actual muse, and he always comes up with some ideas, like Street Smart Spirituality podcast, and some other little ventures that we did together. And he said, well, do your thing. So here I am going to talk about the right use of will. This is a series of books. It's quite unknown, but not so unknown now, since we have done few podcasts on it, and also I've mentioned it pretty much in every podcast because it is such a powerful spiritual guidance to how to become aware of our will, our part of ourselves that only feels. That part of us that doesn't talk but communicates. Big difference there. True communication has to be deeply felt for it to be true. And when mind is split and exchanges ideas, that's one thing, particularly spiritual ideas. And another thing is to deeply experience it in our selves, not only in the mind, not only in the feelings, also in the heart, but most of all in the body, that most controlled and malign and misunderstood part of creation, which is our physical expression of divinity or anything else. So I'm going to start today with the book one, and I think might do maybe even a chapter a week. Now, it's been requested that these books are not read, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to share more of my experience with the different sections of this book. Because there is 8 books to the series, and really it seems like the real process starts in the book 2. I beg to differ. I think the first book is an absolute foundation of this masterpiece that is available from Four Winds Publications, and has been received by C.N. de Rohan. And in 1984, I think, was the first book that came out, and then subsequently every 2 or 3 years came the next book until year 2000. I definitely believe that each book takes at least 2 or 3 years to absorb if it's done properly. It's not one of those books that is to be read just like another book, and it is straight away in the introduction. It's suggested that this book is meant to trigger you and not to be just a mental sort of acquisition of information. And also it will bring forth emotional release And also it is suggested that in this emotional release we don't hurt ourselves or anyone else. And this is very important part of it, because we're going to go into that part of ourselves that is not often expressed. And so to really begin to do this, one has to begin to find a safe place, safe space, safe corner, like this corner. And I can't help to bring my weird sense of humor into this, but because it's so serious at times that a bit of humor goes a long way. But it is very much about being able to feel completely safe, first with the self, with ourselves. Because really, if you ask yourself this question, do you feel perfectly safe? So let's say you're there on your own, wherever you are, or let's say you are in a room, or could be in a room where you're just on your own. It's like, ask yourself, how safe do I really feel? And then you might have your mind rushing in and telling you what it thinks, but really we're not so interested in that part as much as how does it feel? Does it really feel safe? Do you feel safe, for example, with your mind? Is there a safe sort of brother or sister up there upstairs that seem to control everything? Is that mind trustable? Is it something that you can truly rely upon? And does that part of your mind listen to all the other aspects of your being? So this safety and way this is done is very important. Also, it suggests that this emotional release and these triggers are expressed in this safe place. So first is just being safe with ourselves and our environment. Eventually, we're going to allow ourselves to bring in a couple of friends, of allies, who we could develop a sense of safety. Because truly, if we don't feel safe, we're basically not open. When we're not open, we don't really flow. And when we don't flow, we're really not communicating wholeheartedly. Yeah. So for a wholehearted communication, and I'm not talking about the heart, that is just an idea in the mind. I'm talking about the real heart. And the emergence of a real heart happens when there is an awakened mind, then is an awakened feeling body, where the will begins to vibrate. It becomes alive. That's why I call it awaken. And it's not a sense of awakening we are used to hearing about. It's more like the inner vibration, inner aliveness, inner depth. When we're present with that depth, the life begins to be very fulfilling. And so this feeling part of ourselves is what ignites the heart, equally as the spirit or the mind can. Now, first the heart begins to express, but then also it will evolve into a new heart, a new heart that has the mother and the father, right? Generally in this world, there is a lot of prayers go to the Father of creation. But how often do we actually pray to the Mother? And is there such a thing? And this is what these books are pretty much about. It introduces that, that unconditional love has been quite known on earth. We have an idea what that is, and some of us have experienced it. But this book suggests that there is something else that is required at this point, and that is the will, the whole will, the divine will. But most of all, the lost will. And this is what these books are really about, to actually recovering the part of our will that's been lost to us. And until we begin to look for it and really preparing space for this part of us to actually begin to speak to us, not necessarily in the words, but in the sensations and profound, deep understanding of a communication that is of a very different kind than we are used to receiving. And of course, I'm not speaking about anything brand new, but I have not found yet any manual that takes the understanding of feelings, or the part of us that only feels, to the depth as this series of books have been offering to us, if we can hear it. And like I keep saying, there is this danger of, most of our feelings are just mental ideas. Some of our feelings are just simply emotional, in some way, cover-ups. And I'm not in no way saying that thoughts or feelings are in any way wrong, but they are not necessarily the actual will, the actual feeling. Feelings don't talk the way the mind does. And they talk beautifully, but not necessarily in this spoken voice as I might, for example, using right now. So it's the real art is to be able to become present for this incredible part of us that we call the will, and let her to tell us what she hasn't been able to tell us before, because our minds were just so preoccupied with past thinking and stories and dramas and even successes and science, and just we filled up our minds with so much information. Particularly these days, we are so information overload, and so these receptive centers get blocked up by this information, and we lose the sense of connecting to ourselves in this place of complete stillness, where the mind that's been trained to actually listen and become receptive to this part of ourselves that vibrates very subtle vibrational levels. There's often a race for a higher vibrations, a better vibration. I tend to disagree. I'm not saying they're bad, but I'm not saying I find way more satisfaction in these lower regions where I go so quiet and I open the space, become receptive and unobtrusive or demanding to the feelings. And it's really it takes quite it took me a fair practice to get to this point where I can, not that I can, but my feelings can freely communicate to me. And realizing that it's not my feelings, but really my relationship to these feelings that are keeping them unable to really offer the gift that the will has to offer, because the way I understand it, will is that which creates. Everything comes as an idea, usually first, as an inspiration. Then the will begins to respond this inspiration by experiencing, and then, if allowed, she begins to bring in the new. But if will is condemned to labels like, this is rage, and this is anger, and this is this, and this is that, and we think that's our true feelings, then we're gonna be here for a very long time, filling our heads with spiritual concepts, and the will is just waiting. She's just waiting for this spirit, for this man to be there who will stay and who will become receptive, and who will want to hear what is held there and receive it, accept it, and then allow the will to evolve the way it needs to evolve. So I think I'll leave it at this. This is a mild introduction, and I will keep posting these as I manage to record them and see if they speak to anyone. Again, this is purely my experience. There are many people who've done these books, and I met many of them, and I heard so many different ways of how they do it. So there is no right or wrong way. There is just the way I have gone through these practices, and most of all my mistakes and delays, and what held me back, and what really didn't work, and what did really make a radical difference, which really was coming to this place of a radical honesty with myself, and particularly evolving the receptivity of my own mind or my own spirit to be able to be present for the will unconditionally and receive whatever the spirit can handle at the given time. And okay, so I'll just leave it at that. So thank you for giving us a listen, and please give us a few comments, and ask any questions, or point to my blind spots. I'm fine receiving anything, because I love getting triggered. And I do have to add that those bits of the books that used to be huge triggers are now triggering me into a very different way of being, and I like it that way. I really do. So they bring me more into my vibratory higher, or not necessarily higher as higher, but actually maybe the better word is a different way of vibrating than I vibrated before. Okay, before I say another word, Selah.